for the next few minutes so the rest of the registered people could join us. Mission to start and to begin. Hello, hello. It feels so good to see so many familiar and unfamiliar faces and names. My name is Vera. I'm a project manager of unit n-ost, and I will be the moderator of today's meeting. And the first thing I want to ask you, please, is to rename yourself according to the example of some people already, where you could see the name, pronouns, and the city or the village, or just the place, the space where you're joining us from. It would be great to understand a bit more the geography. And if it's possible, also will be good if you could turn on your camera, because you know how it works with Zoom, right? Already, after all these years. So enough with my wonderful jokes, and I'm honored to give a word to my wonderful colleague and friend, Sultanat Shashanova.
Thank you. Yes, so welcome to our presentation of our issue, which is made by a project called UNIT, and this project is a part of NGO called n-ost. So for those who don't know, I will give a couple of words, tell you a couple of words about what our NGO does. As I said, we're a network of journalists, and we offer journalists different possibilities within our projects, like workshops, conferences, grants. Journalists can join our network and profit from being connected with journalists, mostly from Western and Eastern Europe, hence the name that we have. But of course, our geography is broader than this, and we have projects and journalists who are from South Caucasus or Central Asia as well. And UNIT is the project that exists within n-ost since 2018, and it is aimed at bringing journalists together who are willing to write on queer topics and to improve their writing on these topics. And since these 5 years, we have organized numerous internships, meetings, trainings, and we give out approximately 40 grants per year on journalistic materials in these 3 regions. We as well have a cozy Telegram chat where people from those 3 regions engage in discussions, share their work, open calls, and stuff like this. So if you're a journalist or activist who is interested in these topics, you can join us with this link that Pavel will send in the chat, and this link will be only available for 2 hours because once we had a DOS attack on our chat, so we're trying to keep this space secure. This year, the logic of our project is changed a bit. We're not just giving out grants for a single journalist, but we work with media in the regions. And we last year we created a meeting where all this media came together, and we came up with these ideas that we will produce articles for 3 issues on different topics. So first issue would be decolonization, second issue will be personal stories, and the third issue will tackle art and culture. So today you all came to the presentation of our first fruit of our work, which is compilation of articles on the topic of decolonization. And why decolonization, you would ask? First of all, it's a personal interest. I'm an independent researcher and queer feminist who worked with this topic for years. And here, like, I thought my expertise would be helpful. Second of all, this topic is quite hot. And as you see how many people here today, it's like what interests people. And of course, in connection to the full-scale invasion of Russia and Ukraine and other political events that are happening in the 3 regions. I'm not gonna go too much into detail because authors and editors who wrote for this issue are here, and I will give floor to them, or Vika will give floor to them to talk more about what kind of articles they produced. But this is a very interesting issue, which consists out of 10 articles that were produced in local languages, in local media, and then we as a unit team translated it into English and combined it into one cover to bring it closer to the quote-unquote broader Western audience. So here I would like to thank you, my teammates, Vika, Biran, and Pavel Gafarov, who made it possible. Then I want to thank Amito Studio, who made this issue interactive, and you will see there are some cool features while you will read. And also the Foreign Affairs Ministry, who are our donors. And the last but not least, as you all know, Russian forces destroyed Kakhovka Dam, triggering humanitarian and ecological disaster. So please donate to the organizations that you trust. But if you don't know where to donate to, our dear colleague from n-ost, Alena Vishnitska, opened her PayPal for donations. And within these days, she will send those donations directly to Ukrainian organizations, and Pavel will send her PayPal in the chat as well. So thank you. This was my introduction, and I will give, no, and I forgot the main thing is that please give a drum roll to our issue, and Pavel will send the link to it, and you can enjoy the launch officially. We'll start now.
I already sent it. Sorry for killing the suspense.
Okay. Yes, the dramaturgy was how to say, broken a bit, but yeah. So this is
okay. Let's fix then our dramaturgy and put more unexpected situations into this meeting. One of them could be that we are live streamed, by the way. You probably can see this red button in your up left corner. So it's an important information. So you will know how to behave, how to deal with it. And now I would like to give a word to a decolonial researcher, social anthropologist, journalist, and activist from Kazakhstan, Zarina Mukanova, who is with us today. And her article for Masa Media with the name, "What if homophobia in Central Asia is a product of colonialism?" It's a part of our issue. And today we would like to ask her to give us a short introduction to the topic as whole, and to tell us about these homophobic roots of colonialism. And the audience can leave their immediate questions in the chat if you will have some, and Zarina will answer them during this discussion. Zarina, the floor is yours. Welcome, and you will have 20 minutes.
Thank you. I hope you hear me well. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor for me to speak today on the topic of queer identity research, decolonization, and maybe Russian Soviet colonization in general. I will not describe and I will not tell everything that I have written in the article, because it's just the beginning, I think, and you will probably read it in Russian and in English soon, I guess. So I just want to start from myself, how I started this topic. I'm basically a researcher of identity in a post-colonial society, and someone who identifies herself as a queer. I'm honored to address the queer community. My previous and ongoing research is also focused on the community, on decolonization and giving voices to subaltern groups in Kazakhstan community. Yet conducting research in a very conservative community where gender exists only within a binary framework, and all gender roles are predetermined without any choice of or opportunities to live authentically, made me think and rethink on my own identity too, of course. So I am very grateful to n-ost community and team for their support in my research on the colonial colonial roots of homophobia in Central Asia. To begin, I would like to briefly discuss decoloniality and decolonization before delving into the issue from a queer perspective. What should we understand about decolonization and why it is important for us? I want to start with Walter Mignola's statement, who says, since coloniality is ubiquitous, decoloniality is inevitable. Building upon this statement and unpacking this meaning, I would like to emphasize a few key points that I find significant. Mignola argues that coloniality itself is already the decolonial concept. By engaging in the discussions about coloniality across various dimensions, political, social, cultural, and economic, we are already attempting to decolonize, to examine and understand the colonial patterns in different aspects of our lives, and to find ourselves within this context. The concept of coloniality is intervened within the logic of colonialism as an invading force. While colonialism refers to the act of the conquest and imposition of a dominant logic and system of domination, coloniality refers to the way of life and resulting structures that developed within the within the colonies, based on the logic of colonialism, which we can also call colonial narratives. Researchers studying coloniality in different post-colonial countries identify diverse systems of knowledge, behavior, and power that emerged in the wake of colonialism. Decolonization is an endeavor to rediscover the origin of meanings, experiences, and emotions that were suppressed by colonial logic, Given the vast scope of decolonization in political, economic, and social aspects of post-colonial countries, it is beyond the scope of this discussion to cover them all. That's why, because all these topics merits a separate, extensive examination and discussion. So as an academic researcher, it can be sometimes challenging to break free from the research methodologies and methods ingrained in me, which tend to structurize knowledge and thinking in a logical manner, which is already colonial pattern. However, it is crucial to highlight an important discussion between queer studies and decolonial studies of queerness. For instance, while the queer studies often operates within the academic or colonial framework, characterized by subject-object relationships where researchers study an object, while decolonial studies do not adhere to this framework. Decolonial studies involve studying the self in relation to the world and bringing center to ourselves. Of course, it is impossible to completely detach oneself from the past and present environments in which these studies take place. The difference in these approaches also lies in the researcher's positionality. It would not be fair for me to embark on research about colonial roots of homophobia without my personal connection to the queer community. Liberating the privileges afforded to me by my education, human rights activism, and artistic background, I sought to shed light on colonialism as a cultural crime committed against the local communities, their emotions, beliefs, and perspectives that were suppressed, criminalized, and banned, and shed light on colonial narratives that are still exist among us. Homophobia has deep roots in the history of colonialism and continues to have lasting impact on our lives. Researchers like Dan Healy have shed light on the homophobic narratives that emerged during Stalin's era in the Soviet Union, particularly through the enormous Gulag prison systems and criminalization of homosexuality. Stalin's reign of terror not only undermined the understanding of human rights and silenced voice within the Soviet society, but also led to the replacement of initial decolonial ideas of sexual freedoms and the rigid, degendered patriarchal structure. It is important to note that the so-called freedom for women, one can argue, of course, that the Soviet Union gave a lot of freedom for women. So for women, this is very questionable, while it was followed by violent colonial rules. Ethnic groups such like Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Turkmen, and other nomadic groups were not given the opportunity to express their desires or to be consulted on matters of defeudalization, sedentarization, or decolonization. They were not asked if they were desired to be decolonized, or if someone still thinking that Soviet Union is decolonial kind of decolonial project. I know that these ideas are still exist. Well, while ideas were at the beginning like that, but at the end we could see results were not really decolonial, but rather very, very colonial. Yeah, the progress, the progress imposed upon them was often marked by violence and bloodshed without considering their consent or impacts on their communities. Even before the October Revolution, Central Asia was viewed as an object of study by ethnographers, and it had to endure colonial perspective from both the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. In the 19th century, Russian Empire sought to legitimize itself as a progressive colony in the eyes of Western Europe, and already influenced by a romanticized idea of the East in brackets. However, Central Asia, especially its nomadic cultures, did not fit beautiful Eastern exotic model that was more closely associated with the Caucasus, perhaps, or more southern part of Central Asia. This differential treatment and distribution of understanding of beauty, especially of female beauty, to some nations, while neglecting others, reflect as a pattern of colonialism. Here I have to give credits to Madina Tlostanova, who actually shed light writing her books on that, researches, and gave me inspiration to dig in deeper in this topic. The Soviet Union also constructed distinct traditions, cuisines, national costumes, and behaviors for each of the Central Asian nations and Caucasus nations, which still persist today. To decolonize these constructs, it is necessary to critically examine and dispatch history through the fragments that remain. This involves challenging the imposed narratives, understanding the cultural diversity within Central Asia, and acknowledging the agency and experiences of various ethnic groups. By engaging in historical research and analysis, questioning established narratives, and amplifying marginalized voices, we can contribute to the decolonization of the constructs and work towards a more inclusive and equal society. Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, because as we know, maybe if you didn't know, that Kazakhstan was not included in Central Asia during Soviet Union. It only happened after the Soviet Union collapsed. It was like Kazakhstan and Srednya Asia, like not Central Asia, but rather Middle Asia. So Central Asia, it's rather the colonial construct. By engaging the historical research and analysis, questioning established narratives, and amplifying marginalized voices, we can, okay, I read this, I'm sorry. I was a bit nervous to have this 20-minute talk, so I read the text. So yeah, I apologize for this. So Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, experienced the influence of both the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, which viewed as a region through the colonial lenses. The Russian Empire, seeking to legitimize itself as a progressive colony, I'm sorry, I have read it also, I'm sorry, I apologize. Regarding sexual practices, certain practices like bachabazi, for instance, were considered backward and criminalized. While it is true that these practices may not have been prevalent among nomadic Kazakhs, which is also questionable, it is essential to consider the territorial demarcation and borders imposed by external powers, which have led to the existence of diverse Kazakh communities in places like Astrakhan or Omsk in Russia, or Xinjiang in China, or Tashkent. I'm speaking only about Kazakh because I'm Kazakhstani. These communities, you may reflect on your territories if you want. I mean, welcome. These communities may have migrated or have long-standing historical roots in these regions, and the actions and decisions made by outsiders, I mean the Soviet Union, during the border demarcation often disregarded the backgrounds and the histories of the affected people. Additionally, not all Kazakhs were nomads, as there were sedentary cities along the Silk Roads that had their own traditions and sexual practices, which might have differed from those of the nomadic populations. Decolonizing queer identities in Kazakhstan is a complex journey at the moment, and that requires multidisciplinary approaches, of course, including folklore, linguistic, and historical studies. Currently, the decolonial queer movement in Almaty aims to reclaim and reconcile queer identities with the historical, ethnic, and communal past and the different and the present of Kazakh society. The waves of Russian migrations, I differ them like two waves, starting from March 2022 and October 2022. And these two waves. So 2 waves of Russian migration and recent geopolitical events, such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine, have also influenced and challenged the ethnopolitical dynamics in Kazakhstan, prompting communities to evaluate their identities. In smaller towns and cities, homophobia still has significant impact on the self-identity, often influenced by colonial narratives. Partner selection, for instance, partner selections, for instance, is not solely based on a personal compatibility or attraction, but also be influenced by ethnic background. The work of Giorgi Mamedov, who studied queer communities in Kyrgyzstan, also impacted on me a lot and inspired me to study it in Kazakhstan as well. He highlights that the regional differences in the appreciation and acceptance of the queerness. For instance, in Kyrgyzstan, I'm basing on his work, in Kyrgyzstan, the northern part of Kyrgyzstan tends to have a more open association with the LGBTQ community, while the southern part has adopted tradition of hidden families due to homophobic rules of the Soviet era. So if we are, if you want to decolonize queer community, I mean, if we speak from the community, we can often refer to which part of the decolonial roots, whether we can use the Soviet patterns or pre-Soviet, which is hidden, unforgotten, and maybe lost. We don't even have so much evidences, written evidences and sources about what kind of practices did we have before Russian Empire and before merging with Russian Empire and Soviet Union. So yes, and openly, even in Kazakhstan, also openly associating oneself with the LGBTQ community is seen as a privilege that Central Asia appropriated from Russia, but from Russia, which is appropriated from the Western culture, because LGBT, belonging to LGBTQ community means for the, especially for the members of the LGBT community, as a freeing from the patriarchy. Yes, I have, yeah, and not hiding its own identity and sexual identity. In Kazakhstan, being open about one's queerness requires bravery and is entangled with a predominantly homophobic and conservative society. For instance, there are still in use the words like tema or goluboy or rozovaya, which means like tema, it's a team, but you can use this word. You can use this word if you are not, if one is not openly open, and he can or she can say or they can say tema, and this word could be understood in either ways that this is a topic or while you are in the team, so you are in the community or you are one of us. So hidden words. Or goluboy and rozovaya. Goluboy means blue and rozovaya is pink. It's absolutely means, goluboy means blue or you gay, or rozovaya means are you lesbian. So these hidden words, which also means colors, they still also could be understood as if you are part of the community, or you can be openly spoken about that. Yes, yes. So see these words for secrecy and discretion. For my own research, I was very much interested in seeing this from the community, and also for me, the most important part for me was the human right violation. As an activist over human rights, I'm working with very conservative groups also, which is not LGBT community, but also subaltern, which is also colonized and which is also suffers from the coloniality. And I can see the patterns as a researcher. I can see the patterns in a different subaltern suppressed groups like LGBT, for example, or LGBT community, or in Kazakhstan, we have Kazakh ethnic returnees from different countries who do not speak probably Russian language, and Russian language is still understood as a tool of as a sign of progressiveness, while while our language, Kazakh language, or any other Turkic language is still understood as a backward, and Russian language is still important to be understood as a progressive person. So the groups of ethnic returnees, for them, it is also difficult to adapt in the society. They are also kind of subalterns because they are also cannot adapt to the society because they do not speak Russian language. And within the LGBT community, I also recognize this these patterns where Russian language, especially with recent Russian migrants in the queer community, who also belong to the queer community, but also have this colonial understanding or views on the local queer community as a backward, and those who speak not very good Russian language. So I'm basically done. I'm
Such
sorry,
a perfect timing. Wow.
Oh, sorry, I learned it in Germany. Thank you. I would be happy to answer your questions after all presentations. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for your input. And now I would like to give a word to our editors and some of the authors and ask them to first shortly introduce their media and their audience. Second, to provide with some key points from the materials which were published. And the third is maybe to describe some challenges in working with this topic of decolonization, some reactions you received, and maybe some of your personal insights as well. And we will ask you to be short. Each person will have not more than 5 minutes. Short is also good. And I would like to give a word. The floor is yours.
Lika, you were disrupted. Can you repeat the name?
The most important moment. I want to give a word to Chichak Mamadova from Azerbaijan, please.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm really, it's a little bit, okay, no, it's everything is okay. And I'm ready to present my topic. So, yeah, my name is Chichak Mamadova, and I'm a freelance journalist at Khana Media. Yeah, first I would like to thank the team for providing me with the platform to write on this topic. It was my first time working with an LGBT issue, and we focused in this case we focused on the tendencies in the Azerbaijani society amongst the political elites that were influenced by the Russian law that was passed in December 2022, banning LGBT propaganda. We primarily talked about the parliament members and some professors who expressed their views on different media outlets, through different media outlets in Azerbaijan, saying that we as a Muslim country should adopt such a law as well. In this article, we discussed the general, like, whether there is a real possibility that Azerbaijani parliament will pass this kind of a law, despite some parliament members talking about it. And for this, we talked with sociology researchers, lawyers, and of course, the members and representatives of the LGBT community, LGBTQ+ community. And even though we, in the article, we described and came to the conclusion that Azerbaijan is probably unlikely to adopt such a law in the nearest future due to many reasons, due to the obligations in front of the European Court and the European Convention on Human Rights, and etc. There are still some complications to this because getting back a little bit to the history, society-wise, Azerbaijan and Russia developed differently, even though being a part of one country, because religion and culture also play a significant role in defining, let's say, the tendencies amongst the society. But we need to keep in mind that, let's say, 2 or 3 centuries ago, the question of same-sex relationship was viewed and interpreted differently, even through the lens of religion. Let's say Azerbaijan being a Muslim, majority Muslim society, didn't really, like, let's say, the religion itself didn't really put many prohibitions like it does now, because the interpretations change just like the societies do. And additionally, we cannot say exactly that Azerbaijan law system is built and inspired entirely by the Russian one, because there are many cases where the law was accepted in Russia but wasn't adopted in Azerbaijan, and vice versa. For example, law concerning the domestic violence that exists in Azerbaijani law and doesn't exist in the Russian one. But we for sure can say that the sources of anti-feminist and homophobic tendencies amongst the political elites and amongst the government representatives are rooted in the Russian system. For example, the Azerbaijan State Committee on Family, Women, and Children's Problems, that is specifically designated to tackle issues among society, published a report in 2021 on existing family relations, and this report was heavily cited with homophobic and sexist Russian authors, which gives a lot of fruit for our brain. And it is also evident that the LGBT community is still experiencing discrimination. And even the recent case that wasn't included in my article, but I think it's very interesting to see, is that on International Children's Day a week ago, on the 1st of June, the Ministry of Education of Azerbaijan published a congratulation post on their Facebook page that included a picture of children running with kites, and the kite was colored in rainbow colors. And after some heavy criticism from well-known people, and one of them being education experts that is highly respected amongst the Azerbaijani society, the post was removed and changed to a more neutral one. But yeah, this gives a lot of understanding and background for the general tendencies and acceptance amongst society, because of how well the society accepts the anti-LGBT tendencies that the political elites voice. And so back to my story. It was really challenging, and while talking with the members of the LGBT community, I saw how many of them are really afraid of their words being interpreted wrongly, and of their words being interpreted wrongly. And some of them actually asked me if I can provide them with the text that is going to be included in the final version of the story, just so they could be sure that nothing can be interpreted wrongly out of what they said. But I really hope that these kind of stories bring more enlightenment on the problems of the LGBTQI community, not only in Azerbaijan, but also in the South Caucasus and in the entire region. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chichak, for your input and that you found time to join us today. And I will offer to move forward, and I invite to share their inputs Giorgi Baskhajauri from Tbilisi, Georgia.
Hello, everyone. As we already said, I'm Giorgi Baskhajauri, and this is the last article I wrote for Georgian LGBTQIA plus media queergy, and it's about Russian propaganda's influence on Soviet and post-Soviet narratives. I decided to work on this topic because there is not much information about in Georgia, there isn't much information about connection between Soviet and realities and their static attempts to spread anti-queer agenda. So I decided to mention Russian leaders' comments about Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia because it's all connected. And it's connected to Soviet reality as well. So I started writing about Soviet methods, and it starts in 30s before Second World War, and it was because of Soviet Union's need to build this heroic figure in Soviet Union. It's the reason, and many researchers say that it's the reason why they decided to just criminalize homophobic misconduct, and in case of lesbianism, they decided to see this this part as a matter of psychiatry. And after Soviet Union, they used this feeling of losing the ground and hardship to build something new from the start, and the reality that men felt lost and emasculated. So there comes Putin, this heroic, well-pumped man who is seen as the leader and savior and new figure who can build Russia's role in this new reality, and they used different people from governments, from the Church of Georgia, ultra-right pro-Russian groups, and so on, to spread their agenda. Russia sees, and as I researched, Russia sees the South Caucasus as this homogenic place. So all the tools they use in Armenia, Azerbaijani, and Georgia are the same, basically. And in some cases, same organization works in all of the countries, like this South Caucasus Institute, which presents itself as educational platform, but in reality they have these different media outlets, and they are spreading pro-Russian, anti-Western propaganda, and they see, or they present LGBTQIA plus people as the main problem of humanity in general. But there are some differences. For example, in Armenia, main source of spreading the information they need is ultra-right groups. In Azerbaijani, there are political figures who say anti-Western comments, and in Georgia we can see growing anti-queer narratives in government, in society because of government, and they are using this directly using comments against queer people, and they are trying to spread the idea of traditions and these Christian values and so on. And I interviewed and I wanted to mention some things about issues I had. It was so hard to find some people who would talk about Georgian context, regarding queerphobic narratives, and I even tried to interview some people from Sovlab, main Georgian institution working on Soviet past. And they told me that they don't have enough knowledge to talk about the matter. So I used open sources, and I interviewed Tamar Tolordava, professor of Ilyia State University, and she said that connections between Russia and different groups in Georgia, Armenian, on Azerbaijani, can be seen by the comments they use, by the words they use. Most of the words and the homophobic words that are well spread in Georgia came from Russia, and anti-Western as well. For example, liberals and so on and so on.
Dear George, I'm a pleasure breaker and time reminder.
Okay, so that's basically it. That is the short description of what my article is about. So, yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want us to have enough time for all the people who will have their speech. Thanks a lot for your input. And now I want to give a word to Lika Antadze, who represents here our partner, Khana Media, also from Georgia. Lika, are you here? Oops, it looks like Lika is not here. Right?
Maybe we can give word to Greta, who was one of the authors.
Maybe.
Greta, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect.
Hello.
Okay. I'm Greta. I'm from Armenia.
Dear Greta, there is something happening with the sound. Would you please put something closer or higher, or?
It's okay right now.
It's amazing.
Okay. So sorry for wind. I have actually shooting right now, so I'm sorry. So I'm Greta. I'm from Armenia. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I have already films about LGBTQI+ topics. And my next film is about Vera. It's a stand-up comedian. He's not afraid to make jokes about
We don't hear you.
Yeah, dear Greta, sorry. You're like a mermaid there. So we can hear the half of your words and half is like going from under the water.
Okay, I can go somewhere.
Yeah, like when you keep it like this, so close to your mind, the mouse, then it works perfectly. So let's try one more time.
Here is music.
Yes.
I'm sorry for music. Okay. So from where can I start again?
Like where you just finished.
Okay, so Leo is stand-up comedian who is not afraid to make jokes about LGBTQI topics and homophobes in Armenia, because Armenia is really homophobic country. So he's not afraid of that. And I'm also using in film media archives especially humor, because Armenian humor is about LGBTQ topics is really homophobic, and it's inspired from Russian media. So Armenian media is colonized by Russian media. And I can give you some examples. I used in my film example like this. One guy is going to store and asking, do you have guns? And they're saying, no, we don't. And he's like, do you have knives? And they're no. And then he's asking, I don't understand, do you have something for homos? And they're like, yes, we have knives, we have guns. So this is the joke. And everyone in Armenia, it's not funny at all, but to have contrast, I'm using Leo's jokes also, and he's in stand-up, during stand-up concert, he's like, yes, I am homophobic too, because I'm sleeping with only straight guys. So this is the type of humor, and he's like, we need homophobia because if there will be no homophobia, we will have no media in Armenia. So that's why we have homophobia, because everyone is laughing because people are gay, and it's funny. And also I'm using scenes where Leo is talking with his friends about these topics, why Armenia is colonized, Armenian media is colonized by Russian media, and why we are still laughing of these kind of jokes. So, yeah.
Dear Greta, if we have your permission, because we as project managers were lucky enough to see a short piece of your future film, and we were laughing and we heard all these jokes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we have a permission from you at today's events also to watch a short piece from this movie, short excerpt. So let's maybe do it, right? A unique opportunity only today.
And just to add that this film will be a part of the issue, but it's not still like part of it. So when it will be ready, we will add it to the online issue. So this is just a preview screening.
Բարևձեզ։ Եթերում եմ ես Լեո Շահինյանը եւ կրկին մենք վերադարձել ենք հոմոֆոբիան հայկական մեդիայում հաղորդաշարի շրջանակներում, որպեսզի քննարկենք այն հումորները, որ զվարճացրել են ոմանց եւ տխրեցրել ոչ պակաս մարդկանց տարիների ընթացքում մեր մեդիայում եւ TV-ում։ Դե ինչ գնացինք։
Վայ երեխեք, եկան։
Առաջ անցի։
Ինչի։
Տենց ա պետք։ Բուլկի։
Խնսկուտայի։
Շուտ արա։
Ձիա։ Speed.
Վայ, ես ինչ եք ասում, բժիշկ։ Դուք ուզում եք ասել ես հեսա կմեռնեմ։
Здрасте, я Лео. Добро пожаловать на открытый микрофон в Хемингуэйзе. Тут надо хлопать. Спасибо. Ты придешь в следующий раз плакатом, типа аплодисменты. Я Лео, мне 25 лет, это информация, которая вам нихуя не нужна. Но на всякий даю. Че, я не пойму, там на последнем столике лучше, чем тут? Я педагог по профессии, это очень хорошо получается. Нет, сегодня у нас будет открытый микрофон, суки. Были люди, которые уже были на... Да, по что вы мои суки? Были люди, которые уже были в открытом микрофоне, на открытом микрофоне, я знаю, Молодцы. Когда спрашиваю, блядь? Если ответ да, хлопаем. Если нет, просто сидим. Поняли? Все.
Դե շատ կամ տենց ռուսական
Գաղութարական
առիքներ, այո։ Օրինակ սեքսիզմն ու հոմոֆոբիան։
Բայց ինչ ես մտածում դրանք ռուսական։
Կարծում եմ Նազենի ջան, որ թուրնու թվանք հաղորդաշարի շիտա։
Չէ, բայց լուրջ, բայց դա գոյություն ունի նաև արևմուտքում։ Սեքսիզմը, հոմոֆոբիան։
Իհարկե։
Բայց խեն դրանք հենց ռուսական արժեքն են։ Հայկական կարան։ Լիքը մարդ ասում է, որ դրանք հայկական արժեք։
Սխալ ասում։
Խեն։
Որտեվ չի կարամ
գաղութական արժեքները հայկականի տեղ։
Այո։
Լիքը մարդ մուսուլմանական արժեքներն հայկականի տեղ են գալու։
Այո, որտեվ չի կարամ առաջի քրիստոնեությունը ընդունած։
Հա, բայց մենք ո՞նց ենք քրիստոնեությունը ընդունել։
Կապ չունի, չի կարա այդտենց
նահատը։ Մենք սպանել ենք այն մարդկանց, վառել ենք այն տաճարները, ովքեր որ դեմ են եղել քրիստոնեության։
Մենք չանեմ հանքավոր խումբ եղել են քրիստոնեություն։ Շենքերի վրա հարցան։
Здрасте, вы с России, да? Вот, то, что надо. Я знаю, что в России... Я знаю, что в России топ-2 импорт-экспорта – это снег и гомофобия, да? Что вы скажете о гомофобии? Это что? Вы не любите гомофобию, вы гомофобная, я не пойму. Алло? Не гомофобный. Браво, аплодисменты! Молодцы. А у вас есть геи, друзья? А по вам я скажу, что у вас там глиттер, вы хорошо выглядите и очень прекрасно. А где эти геи, друзья? А где эти геи, друзья, сейчас?
На Сейшелах.
Иди че? Бля, ну серьезно, типа туда, типа... Да. А вы же даже в законе есть, да? Против геев.
Ընդհանրապես մեծ ինստիտուցիոններում crisis-ը, crisis-ը ճգնաժամ, որովհետև հայերը почему-то կոմերցիոն նպատակներից ելնելով նայում են տեսնում են ինչա դրսում popular ու իրանք այդ են փորձում ստեղ recreate անել, իսկ քանի որ իրանք դեպիլ են ու անգլերեն ինչին հասկանում դրսում Ռուսաստանում այո Ռուսաստանում է դառնում ու ոնց որ սաղ այդ ամեն ինչը անգամ ձևերը որ նայես թե ոնց է բան արած ասենք թեկուզ նյուզրումերը, թեկուզ ծիբակները, թեկուզ բանը լրիվ սենց ինչ-որ շատ նման է, հատկապես հիմա մի քիչ ավելի քիչ նման է, որտեղ դե տեխնոլոգիաները զարգացել են, բայց 2000-ականներին, 2010-ականներին ոնց copy paste literally
հիմա էլ
Տիգրան Կարապետիչի պարավոզ հաղորդումը լրիվ ոնց որ բանը ելներ, կոլեջ ու ձերսը ելներ
լավներ տիկոն that's Տիգրան Հումորը դե вообще տենց է, որտեղ like կավեենից է եկե հայկական հումորներ ու հայրը մի շատ լավ են եղել կավեենում այդ ես որովհետև ու հիմա էլ է տենց շատ даже underground stand-up-երների ոնց որ բանը կոպի են անում ինչ-որ ռուսական stand-up comedian-ներին դա մա ռուսերենով է հիմնականում stand-up-ը ու stand-up-ի աուդիտորիան է ռուսախոս է
The end. Thanks a lot, Greta, for this unique opportunity. So we can see what we are really waiting for.
Thank you.
And we'll be really proud that this movie will be a part of our issue. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are moving forward, and we still have some people representing South Caucasus region. And if Lika is back, I want to give you the word. And as a control freak, I want to say that we are a bit out of time. So let's try to be fast and full of energy.
Thanks, Lika. So I will be very short. Thank you for organizing this presentation. And I'm representing Khana, I'm director, and I think we already had Chisha talking about her story for us, and Greta also about her short documentary film, which she's currently developing, and eventually you can watch it at our platform. It's n-ost when it gets republished. Yeah, like for us, it's extremely important because from day one, Khana is covering this issue, and obviously it's pretty much obvious why we do it, because of a worsening situation even now in the South Caucasus, especially in Georgia, from where I am. And speaking of Georgia, then I will quickly move to Tamar Shatberashvili, who also produced for us within the scope of this project, and her article deals with the metrics of colonial power, and maybe she will briefly also present the work process and kind of expand on the topic. So, thanks. Tamar, floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Lika, and thanks to the organizers. I'll be brief. Well, I'm a freelance writer and interested in topics such as migration, displacement, sense of belonging, and kind of bringing in decolonial narratives in this sense. And I wrote this feature story kind of as an attempt to pass the borders and discussions that I've had previously in academia, because I come from recently from academia, so I'm kind of I have this way of thinking more, and I try to kind of find the medium that would portray what I wanted to kind of get across outside of academia in everyday life in Georgia. And the main focus was to understand decolonial narratives and process, kind of allowing a reconnection with social-cultural roots and traditions beyond and in between dominant colonial narratives for Georgia. And perhaps part of the challenges that I mentioned is because it's been only a few months that I returned to Georgia, so I kind of found myself a bit, I found this distance kind of physical as well, and not only from certain groups and certain narratives as well. So I'll share briefly that firstly, I produced my draft through the academic experience and written in a language that I found relevant and engaging for the wider audience. But then trying to make it more engaging, I started thinking about bringing in more interviews and finding respondents and coming up with questions, which was not easy, definitely. And there were two aspects that I would like to briefly touch upon. One was who would want to talk to me about the topic and the aspect that I wanted to get across, kind of. And the second, what kind of questions would I ask? So I bring in the everyday experience, and it doesn't stay with kind of, I don't know, for instance, the text that Minelo and Tosanova wrote that I was very inspired by. So my goal kind of was exploring coexistence of national and European identities, which thanks to my respondents, I think was successful. Also othering experience and parallels between the experiences of Georgian society, kind of self-determination, considering the Soviet past, and widely chosen European future, which is a very hot topic at the moment, and it became even kind of more relevant when I was working on the article. And also, on the other hand, experiences of queer individuals, also through the lens of self-determination. So in this regard, I talked to Uta Bekaya, a multimedia artist engaging with the roots and self-determination of Georgia and queer individuals as well. So this was a very kind of smooth connection, let's say, and I think proved to be an interesting case for the readers as well. But I also had two other respondents, one anonymous, so I won't kind of specify the names, who found the topic interesting and kind of brought the insights talking about the role of the church, the Rose Revolution as well. So this kind of transformational period, and the importance of practices of care. So to sum up my experience, I would kind of highlight in terms of challenges that, yeah, for me was it was difficult to ask the questions in a way that draws attention of people, and the people kind of, for example, when there are like survival and basic needs at play in everyday life in a lot of queer individuals in Georgia, it's hard to direct their attention to decolonial narratives and and partially academic narratives that I find interesting and insightful for the journalistic media as well. And what I wish to engage is to find ways more to unlock this potential and make this topic in its kind of multi-dimension more accessible and relevant to the public. So I would be happy, and I'm happy to hear some perspectives that the authors took and also the organizers. So it's a very interesting and important challenge for me, kind of trying to figure out this approach and medium that that makes this topic more accessible and interesting. Thank you. Hopefully it was not a lot longer than 5 minutes.
That was perfectly on time. Thank you, dear Tamar. I had no idea it will feel so good to see like real people, real faces, to hear their real words. Of course, reading the articles is also amazing, but now I just want to share that it feels amazing. And I hope we could see each other later in Poland in October, because this physical real meeting is also planned, but let's see, let's wait. A lot of things could happen until that time. So we are moving forward. We are fast and full of energy, or we're trying to be. And I want to give a word to Yuliya Ruzhechka, who is representing the platform called Women Platform.
Correct. Thank you, Vika. So yeah, hello to everyone. My name is Yuliya Ruzhechka, and I'm coordinator for Women Platform Publications. So first of all, what is important to say is that we represent not a classic media, but a regional platform founded around 5 years ago that was launched and managed, and still is, by activists from different countries from Eastern Partnership region. So this is probably important to take into account also while you read the articles and the perspective that you will have while discovering them. So what is interesting? Women Platform Decolonization. How did it happen, right? So platform was initially launched on the topic of women rights, but then it grew into a broader one. Actually, feminist gaze, queer gaze, inclusive gaze more largely, has so much in common, because it counter or challenge, actually, as we heard before today, the dominant discourse. So all of the above mentioned gazes are united by kind of sensitivity that they can bring to different topics. And that's how actually Women Platform ended up as a partner in this series of articles on the topic of decolonization. And also I wanted to thank UNIT, Vika, Salt, and Pavel, and also our collaborators for this issue, and all the partners of this project actually for such an enriching collaboration already. So actually, even though the topic of decolonization is so wide, because we didn't give more precisions to the authors we wanted to work with, we saw that 3 groups of authors, so from Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine, they tried to narrow their ideas into some similar direction. So obviously in the relationship to the Russian or Soviet colonization. And showing the colonization topic is still a big deal in Eastern Partnership countries, and that it's also a real regional issue, not an isolated issue of some countries. So that is why it is so necessary today to revisit this past, the history, and put these different kind of gazes and alternative optics actually to the dominant ones. So that was our main goal for these 3 articles from 3 countries. So I will present you briefly 3 articles, and then some surprise guests who participated with us in the preparation of this issue. So from Belarusian perspective, we discover poetical and political texts that reflect on the tendencies, both in past and present, that influence the situation of queer community, and that is based on very personal perspective as well. And the text is called Gay Pride Parade Dajinki, or White March. Which holiday suits Belarusians of the future? So it's even have this projection of the future. And the main idea, I would say, is that when the empire collapsed, so such an empire as Soviet Union, right-wing tendencies sometimes even intensify, which makes a position of queer persons even more vulnerable, because from persons who were like not visible, they become kind of leveled up, and their identity is even highlighted brighter, which puts them is sort of under lights, under radars, and so they even can be more attacked. And actually, like being attacked is the worst scenario, and the best, of course, in the bracket scenario, is that they have no connection to this new society, which is also, of course, a big problem. So I invite you to read this article and to discover this perspective. And the Moldovan article, which is written by a group of authors, Ekaterina Peslari and Maxim Totokuklev, which is called Russian Colonialism and Homophobia in Moldova. So this is a collaborative text on how Russian colonial power over Moldova shaped and warped Moldovan identity and the queerphobic influence that Russia has in Moldova nowadays also. So it's both from historical and contemporary perspectives, from Moldovan principality in 14th century towards nowadays actually usage of swear words that have their roots in Russified, prison and homophobic subculture. And the third article is from Ukrainian perspective, written by Anna Vorobyova, which is called Life of LGBTQI+ people in the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. So this text actually analyzed the impact of propaganda on violence against the LGBTQI community and examined the dynamics and features of the Russian media space as a factor of increasing pressure on the community. So the author shows this on some specific cases, specific examples of the life of a representative of LGBT+ community, and assess the general state of human rights in all occupied territories of Ukraine since 2014. So 3 different perspectives on this topic from the Ukraine, from Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine. And also, when we wanted to deliver these stories for the audience, obviously we searched for some written style, for some like angle for the articles, but also for the visual solution. So can you imagine how the topic of decolonization can be reflected through the illustrations? Personally, for me, it seemed like a big challenge. But we have our fabulous illustrator, Khana, who is here with us today, and that can tell you a bit of the background on how and why she came up with this idea that you can discover on the website of UNIT First Issue, but also on Women Platform. And so the idea that emphasizes not the struggle, but the strength, actually. So Khana, I know you are here, and maybe you would like to take the floor.
Hi, everyone. So I asked ChatGPT to help me to introduce myself in 3 short sentences. So I'm a serial expat currently in Berlin. I'm a passionate but slow dyslexic reader and occasionally writer. And I am a visual communicator, aka illustrator, on the mission to give smart journalistic work a chance to be clicked on. So as a Women Platform came to me to ask to illustrate those three texts, I thought about, first of all, color. Yeah, and I choose the colors of French tricolor because it represents égalité, fraternité, liberté. And it's my wish for the LGBT+ community for freedom and for freedom to express themselves and for equality. So the Belarusian text is, maybe you can see it, is a representation of this feeling of being a part of being inside of the system, but not be able to communicate and to express themselves, for the community. And the text about Moldova, you can see the 3 babushki, the 3 Russian dolls that are trying to chew on the Moldovan shawl with a Moldovan pattern on it. It's like stands for this power dynamic in the culture. And the Ukrainian text is inspired by this ancient Greek columns with people, this Atlants and Caryatids, people who are standing strong under huge weight, but not losing strength and force. Yeah. And my goal was to give, I hope to enhance the emotional connection of the reader with the text. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And I would say when I received the first illustrations actually for these articles, because at the moment they were not even articles already, but the pitches, I was amazed by how reflecting on this short description of such a topic, which for me seemed not visual at all, you can like go so much further with the metaphors and provide these pieces of art illustrating this article. So thank you so much for that. And also, I would like to ask our dear editor, Inga Daraselia, to share her editor's experience on working on this issue. I saw you're here, Inga, so if you can join.
Shortly, like 1 to 2 minutes, please.
Okay. I'm very sorry if I can talk without a camera on, because like, if it's okay. But yeah, but I don't sure like how. Because now I see Sultanat, but
we are here. We are listening to you. Yeah.
Okay, so I will be I'll try to make it very short. Just a minute. So unfortunately, this article from Ukraine, it's not analytical how the rest, and it's not about historical facts. We tried to make it more simple. It is the story of two gay men who were able to escape from Russian occupied cities in east and south of Ukraine. So they're from different cities, but they share this experience of living in places where Russian propaganda had major influence. And more than that, they themselves believe in Russian propaganda in the past. Yeah, I will not tell the whole article about this, just some parts. Like yeah, you should be aware probably, because in the article they share some what exactly they experienced during the occupation and how they manage or failed to hide their sexual orientation from Russian troops. And they also talk about torture and sexualized violence. They both now live in territories under Ukraine control, and also in the article they compare their previous experience with how queer people are treated in this in free part of Ukraine. One of the heroes, Yuliya, after this experience, organized an NGO that works to help male survivors of sexualized violence. Yeah, and I want to make a little announce, if I may, but after all the torture, what he came through, Yuliya started having major health problems. And right now his friends helping him to raise money for brain surgery. And if I can, I will share, if it's okay, I will share a link in the chat. The necessary amount of money is almost collected, but unfortunately we have just 1 day left. So if you can donate, it will be very helpful. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Inga. Sure, just send this link to the chat so people can see it. We are moving forward. According to the plan, we have just 9 minutes officially and 3 people. So my control freak saying that there is no way to control nothing in this life, almost. So I will offer to those of you who have this opportunity to stay a bit longer, but not super longer. But I just want to say that we are trying to be on time, but it's not always possible. And let's move forward. We are coming deeper to the Central Asian region, countries and contexts. And I would like to invite to this online stage Vera Suhina, who represents Sarpa media.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's really great to see you all here today. So I'm an editor and founder at Sarpa Media.
Am I the only? Yeah, now I can hear you. Sorry.
And our main areas of focus now is human rights and civic activism. And now, currently, we are the only one media who are covering the topics of LGBTQ plus rights. I don't know why, but maybe this is because we are not officially registered and have not yet come under the radar of law enforcement agencies. So our article is called Non-Traditional Values Did Uzbekistan Inherit Homophobia and Concept of Family from the Soviet Union? I worked as an editor on this piece, and Dana Aparina is the author, and Alina Alimova is the illustrator. Unfortunately, they cannot be present today. Sorry. And maybe some of you are aware that Uzbekistan has one of the strictest laws on LGBTQ plus rights in the entire post-Soviet place. The country has the Article 120, which provides up to 3 years in prison for consensual sex between men. And many people believe that this article exists in the country because religion is widespread here, but a similar article existed in the Soviet Union. So for us, there were no questions about what the decolonialism mean for us in the context of LGBTQ plus rights. I'm sorry, I'm in public space. Yes, and in this article, we tried to analyze how laws in the post-Soviet space changed after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and how in Uzbekistan these laws remained unchanged. And we also analyzed how our country continues to follow Russia's policies regarding to rights of this community. In particular, our country is preparing to adopt a draft of the information code, which will prohibit the propaganda of non-traditional relationships, and in addition, it's very interesting how not only this topic, but is not articulated in Uzbekistan, but also the topic of decoloniality is not articulated. So it was really a work from the scratch. It was quite difficult to work on the article, and there is very little information on this topic in Central Asian open sources. And there is no experts in Uzbekistan at all. And here I would like to say a big thank to Massa Media and Zarina, because we used a quote from the article, and it helped us to create some kind of structure for our article. And I think it confirms how important for us to work together on these topics and to support each other in our work. Yes, it's surprisingly, we received a fairly positive response, no threats for us or death wishes for LGBTQ plus representatives. And I think there are two reasons for that. The first one is that we try to avoid as much as possible all what might be called this propaganda. We try to be as more objective, as possible. And the second reason is, unfortunately, we work in a kind of bubble for progressive people from the capital, from Tashkent, and they are okay with this topic. And the situation in regions of Uzbekistan are not the same. But I hope that we will fix that in the near future. Yes, I think it's all. If you have some questions, I will be glad to answer.
Thank you, dear Vera, for your amazing work. I think we can like finish these presentations from our authors and editors. We still have these questions and answers, not as long as we planned, but still something. So now I want to give a word to our author, journalist from Kyrgyzstan, Mamatkazy Rasululu, and also Pavel, our colleague, will help with the translation.
Спасибо. А нормально, если я буду камеру не включать? Или
Как тебе удобно? Whatever you feel better for you.
Что-то я не чувствую хорошо, потому что лучше без камеры. Извиняюсь заранее. И прошу прощения, что я буду говорить на русском. Было бы классно, я бы с любовью говорил бы на кыргызском, но у нас нет переводчика с кыргызского на английский, так что я буду говорить на русском. Вот, Павел, вы будете синхронно проводить или мне нужно будет подождать немножко?
Да, вот как раз пару предложений, и можно подождать. My name is Mamatkazy, and I am apologizing ahead that my camera is off and that I am talking in Russian. I would like to talk Kyrgyz, but there is no translator available for Kyrgyz to Russian, to English, sorry.
Спасибо. Я Казы еще раз, я из Аша, это на юге Кыргызстана, где более люди консервативные и с принципами ислама, да, вот. И на данный момент я нахожусь, точнее, живу в Москве, и моя тема, получается, миграция и деколонизация получилась. И эта идея мне пришла, когда я сам впервые, точнее не впервые, но я сам, когда находился на миграции, и, ну, можете перевести, да.
Once again, my name is Mamatkazy. I come from the city of Osh, so one of the regions of Kyrgyzstan which are more distant to the center and where people tend to be more conservative, which is also connected to Islam. And my project deals with the idea of migration. Right now, I'm myself in Moscow, and my own experience of migration is what brought me to this topic.
Спасибо. Изначально мне это пришла идея, когда я сам находился в миграции, и все люди, почти все квирные люди, квир-сообщества в Кыргызстане уезжают из Кыргызстана по почве гомофобии, почве давления со стороны семей, даже со стороны общества, да, получается. Но когда они уезжают из Кыргызстана, но первый выход это получается Россия. Как мы все знаем, тут очень много мигрантов из Центральной Азии, но Россия не всегда, ну почти всегда принимает мигрантов, как сказать, не с положительным образом, да, получается. Ты, допустим, если ты просто мигрант, точнее, ты мигрант, если ты просто мигрант, то тебе более легче. Я бы не сказал, что это находиться в миграции в России, это не легче, это сложно, но если ты еще и из квир-сообщества, это еще дабл давление, да, получается.
So, as I've said, the project deals with migration, and it comes from my personal experience. As a queer person, I left Kyrgyzstan, and queer people do tend to leave Kyrgyzstan. And there is a kind of a paradoxical situation there, because on the one hand, Russia is the first destination. Queer people from Kyrgyzstan tend to speak because Russia tends to accept people from Kyrgyzstan. On the other hand, homophobia in Russia is very widespread.
Thank you. And когда ты вот, мне стало интересно, находят ли тихое место, да, для себя эти мигранты из квир-сообщества, да, когда они уезжают, мне это стало интересно и начал накопиться. И тут в России у меня несколько знакомых, и я начал с ними контактироваться, и получается так, что да, Россия действительно выход из гомофобной среды в Кыргызстане, но это и другая гомофобная среда, получается, и дает еще больше давления для квир-сообщества, получается. И в моем материале, получается, я брал интервью у одной транс-девушки, которая переехала почти, да, из Кыргызстана в Москву, и сейчас она здесь живет, работает, занимается секс-работой, и она рассказывает свою историю.
So, the question I posed at the beginning of this work was, do the queer people who escaped Kyrgyzstan manage to find a place for themselves in Moscow? So I reached out to some acquaintances from Kyrgyzstan, which I've had, to ask them that question. And the impression I got was that, yes, Russia is a way to escape homophobia widespread in Uzbekistan, but you're escaping it to arrive at a place where maybe another kind, but still homophobia is very widespread, and it is not really a way to avoid homophobia and yeah, make it escape from the homophobia itself. So the protagonist of the article is a trans woman from Kyrgyzstan who is doing sex work here in Russia, in Moscow.
И эта девушка рассказывает свою историю, как она сталкивается тут с дискриминацией со стороны ее клиентов, да, русских местных, получается. Получается, она уехала из Кыргызстана в почве гомофобии, но она еще и тут тоже, тут она, конечно, не получает давления со стороны семьи своей, но тут она опять сталкивается вот колониальной мысли, да, от местных, получается. И цель моего проекта показать вот, да, Россия это выход, то есть для тех, кто хочет быстро выйти из ситуации, да, в Кыргызстане, если находился в плохой ситуации, то, но не лучшая, не самый лучший выход, получается. То есть Россия, да, это выход из Кыргызстана, но не самый лучший. Этого я хотел показать в своем материале. И это аудитория моего проекта скорее местные квир-люди Кыргызстана.
So the protagonist of the material, this woman, she told me about the discrimination. The way they treat her is in fact discriminatory. And though she was able to escape homophobic pressure from her family or from the Kyrgyz society, she still stumbles upon this colonial mindset, which is manifested by her clients. So regarding to this question, is Russia a valid way for people from Kyrgyzstan to escape homophobic attitudes? Yes, it may be a way if it is an emergency, but it is by far not the best way, and it's not something that people would pick on their own. I'm sorry, извини, Каз, я что-то пропустил.
Да, все нормально. Вот, и что еще? Спасибо за обращение, спасибо Юнит за поддержку, и предлагаю всем заглянуться на мой материал на английском языке, там есть, я думаю, еще ссылка на оригинал. Вот, можете ознакомиться, оставьте комментарии и поделитесь своими мнениями. Вот и все. Спасибо большое.
So I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Unit, for supporting, and thank all of you for listening. Please check out the article, give it a share, give it a like, give it some love.
Thank you so much. And we are coming closer to the end, and we still have one person whom we want to give a word today. And it is indeed Aisana Ashim from Batyr Jamal from Kazakhstan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aisana. I'm the founder of Batyr Jamal. It's a feminist media in Kazakhstan. We have like 100,000 followers on Instagram and TikTok. We are only on social media. In social media, also we have Telegram, Twitter, and so on, but we don't have much audience there. We are a feminist media, and our focus target audience is young girls in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. So regarding our article, we did, actually, I can show you. Yes, so we did, I wanted to translate one word. And we did one article that was divided into two parts. We compared legislation, as you can see, Kazakhstan and Russian towards LGBTQ. And the occasion of this article was article in Russian media about how a man, he is LGBTQ, he was beaten in Norilsk when he came from Russia, when he left Russia because of war and so on. And they portrayed Kazakhstan as such a unprogressive country with people who hate LGBTQ and so on and so on. And we were like surprised because Russia had worse legislation that towards LGBTQ comparing to Kazakhstan. But of course, we also have bad legislation. So it was like one of the reasons to do this article, and we compared in different aspects like army, having children, and so on and so on. Yes, it's part 2. And Vika asked about response in our audience. I can say that actually that was not so much response, because I think because we usually, because we often cover LGBTQ. It's a first reason. And second reason, I think it was a great article, but there was no like a lot of human touch. And our audience, they love human touch when they're like some story and so on. But I think still it's a very important article. I mean, it has like more than 2,000 likes, but we are used to like have an article with 5,000 likes, 10,000 likes. But of course, likes, it's not everything. So, and about haters, I categorized them into two like sections. Haters. First section is because we are talking about our audience who is like a bit progressive, more than like majority of people in Kazakhstan probably. And we have this function that people can comment in our account only if they are like following us. So you need to know that it's already a filter. But even these progressive people, they also have like very discriminating views towards some groups. And they are divided into the categories that I divided them. First category is like, they're always talking why LGBTQ, they want to cling to, it's a word I Googled, cling to feminists. LGBTQ should form their own movement, why they want to be with feminist groups. And I'm always like, it's very like interesting to me, like, and I think it's a great, observation, because we are like moving forward. Like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, they were against feminists. Now they're taking like, okay, feminists are okay, but why LGBTQ wants to be with feminists? They should be separated. And the second category of this discrimination people, they are talking like they're changing narrative, and they are saying that first we need to we need to work with human rights, and then after that, let's discuss LGBTQ rights. Like people LGBTQ are not humans. And it's also interesting, like how we as a country will move on and work with this like cognitive problems. Yes. And we will have more article. It will be the second one, will be in Masar soon. It's another media we are working with in the village. And I'm really, how to say, really, I'm expecting what we will do, like what we will publish. Yes.
Let's see what will it be. No one knows.
Yes, Aisana segued very smoothly to the future. This is our first issue. We'll have two more. And the second will have this personal touch because it will be focused on personalities and personal stories. So keep in touch, and yeah, we'll open the floor to discussion. Maybe we can stay for 15 more minutes for people who can stay.
I would like to offer here maybe to make a super quick research. If you have questions which could not wait until tomorrow or like next issue presentation, please raise your hand and we will see what is the situation. Okay, so I can see that probably you all will come to the next issue presentation, and
we will try to be more organized maybe with the time, but we really gave it all the thought that we could, but
there is a message there.
Yeah, some new people really wanted to talk, so it like added up, but I think it was really nice, really nice conversation. Yeah, Lara said that we're scared people now. Please don't be scared. Let's stay for 15 minutes for those who have energy and time. And I think Anya wants to ask a question. You can just turn on your computer and ask the question.
Your microphone and ask a question. Anya, am I scared you as well? And now you don't want to ask your question? Anya with a question. Hello.
Oh, yes, I see Anya. But we don't hear you.
Anya, do you want to write this question to the chat maybe if it doesn't work so good with the audio? Oh my God, that's a long one. I will read it then. One of the ways Western colonialism works is by the othering the colonized people. And that makes me doubt that the term colonialism is applicable to what happened to countries like Belarus. I think the people of Belarus have absolutely suffered from Russian imperialism, but the component of othering is clearly missing, in my opinion. How is what Russia did to Belarus different from any nationalist project, let's say Germany? Germany used to be a culturally diverse region comprised of many different kingdoms until they were united under one nation to serve imperial ambitions of the elites and became more culturally homogeneous. You could say that a similar thing happened to Belarus. Belarusians aren't othered under Russian nationalism. They're included into the Russian national mythos as a sister nation, arguably as all Slavic people are. And here we come to the question. Do you all think, you all think that this term is applicable to Belarus? Dear Anya, who should answer your question?
Maybe we can segue this question to Yuliya.
Well, I'm not a specialist of decolonization, and my answer would be probably that decolonization in the context of these publications was not probably only this academic term, but a bigger term, you know, that can englobe different relationship of one country towards another. So I guess it's kind of a vulgarization of scientific terms, which is probably not always the exact way to do it. So I think I will copy what you've written, Anya, just for my own memory and my own understanding, better understanding of the topic, because I think that it's really super interesting, and I was just shaking my hand while reading you. So yeah, I'm talking, but I'm not answering your question, though. I think for me personally, to answer this question, it would be necessary to precise the term of decolonization and how to understand it in the scope maybe of this collaboration, or is it like only precise term that matters? Yeah, maybe someone would like to complete.
Yeah, it was not an easy question. I think you did great.
Maybe I can add here, like my opinion is that, of course, the logic of Soviet project and imperial power was quite different across all the three regions. Like when it came to Belarus, Ukraine, it was like, as you said, this brotherly idea of Slavic nations. When it comes to South Caucasus, it was a bit different, like orientalizing like the culture, but at the same time, at least Georgia and Armenia are Christians as well. So like the logic of the othering was not like going in the same violent direction as it was done in Central Asia, where people were nomadic and seen backwards and seen as uncivilized, like native savages that needs to be cultivated. So the degrees of colonial violence were different, but the violence was there. And I think the struggle and the process of decolonization of the broader idea and of movement or like approach can be uniting for all of the countries, and that what was the logic of UNIT in bringing those stories under one cover. And Zarina wanted to add something.
Yes, I just wanted to add, but then I thought I missed the point apparently, but maybe it would be wrong. I'm like, from the perspective, as Saltanat also said, from the perspective on non-white people, I mean, of Central Asia, we would say that it looks like we have a similar position, like Kazakhstan has a similar position as Belarus from one hand side. From one hand side, we could say that not all whites, which are called, I mean, I'm adding up the racist theories, but they are also completely within the colonial understanding. Yeah, like we all understand this. So not all Europeans are equally the same colonizers, we know. That's why they understand, I mean, the sister nation, I think the understanding of the sister nation is yeah, it's kind of also a colonial project where someone is the younger sister, someone is the elder sister, where Russia is definitely feel herself or itself as an elder sister. Well, the Ukraine and Belarus were the younger sisters who needs to, I mean, like Ukraine needs to be punished. I'm sorry if I'm saying bad things, but I mean, this is just the association was like this. So covering, calling someone as a brother, we have this, I mean, yeah, calling someone as a sibling or sister is always hierarchical relationship, which is also colonial narrative, because we all know that siblings could never, I mean, it's rarely twins in this case, I mean, who also born one after another, because they are not born in the simultaneously unless they, I mean, I don't know if there is a case. I mean, the sibling, I mean, when sister nation or brother nation, it's always hierarchy. That's my point.
Thank you, Zarina. Lika?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on a point with Georgia, highlighting that Russian colonialism in Georgia works on a different levels, right? Like on the religion side, you have that, yes, this similarity that Georgians and Christians, so playing on that similarity that we are brothers because we are Christians, and Georgia is also Christian. So that's where Russian colonialism plays on similarity, and Georgia othering and exoticizing plays with the Georgian culture, right? It's wine and dancing and sunny place. And I think this it is applicable to South Caucasus definitely, but it is applicable on a different levels. And classic Western colonials, like colonials that Edward Said described in his famous book, works a bit differently when it comes to Russian colonialism. And the research on colonialism, on Russian colonialism, it's so behind that, for example, in Georgia, we rarely use this term. When we were starting this project, there was a question of where we should actually use this colonialism, but it's really the flaw in our research perspective. In our academy, there is a flaw that we do not, we are not interested, and we haven't been opening this topic, which has a very different layers, and it's much more complicated than the classic Western colonialism.
Can I ask here, why do you think it is? Because when you visit Georgia, it's a very strong anti-Russian sentiments that I did not see in Central Asia or in other places where decolonial thought is already kind of strong. But why do you think this?
But but it's really on. First of all, I think it may be a very subjective view, but this has happened recently, only after 2008 war maybe, and even so after the war in Ukraine. Before 2008 war, any discussion of Russian colonialism, I think, was close to zero. Let's say this Soviet colonialism. 9th of April, it was pretty much amount of influence, Russian influence in Georgia before 2008 is unimaginable. And even after 2008, and come on, even after the war in Ukraine, we have such a difficult situation, right? So maybe, yes, there is some kind of resistance, but I think we're still behind, unfortunately.
Inga is right, and the concept of brotherhood of these countries is just propaganda. It was created artificially. Russia has been erasing the differences between Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine for centuries in order to make them similar. Yes, I want to say that we will finish now. I want to say thank you to all our contributors, to all the authors and editors. I'm really proud of our work, and I hope these articles and these videos will help all of us to find more queerness in decoloniality and more decoloniality in queerness. And we will keep you updated. We'll continue our work, and have a great evening. And for some people, it's already deep night.
Yeah, thank you all for coming, and especially thanks to our Central Asian colleagues who stayed for so long. It's already 11 in the night for some of you, 12 maybe for others, and all the contributors. Yeah, thank you for all of your spontaneous additions. We really enjoyed it. I saw how much this topic is interesting. We had 100 subscriptions for the event, and 50 people came, and this rarely happens in this format, and we were excited to see that we strike the chord and gave people what they want. Now the interesting part starts, you reading and spreading the issue, looking through it, and also know that at some point some of those articles will be printed out in a tangible paper version, So please follow UNIT on Instagram, and you will be able to get a copy, hopefully sometime in the autumn. Yes, so this was my last word, and thank you, Vika, for moderating and being control freak.
Doesn't help, as we see, but it should be like this.